Design build doesn't break because of drawings or budgets. It breaks when client intent gets lost between sales, design, and the field. In this episode of Construction Genius, I sit down with Ryan Teicher, CEO of REDCOM Design and Construction, to unpack how a fully in-house design build firm actually works day to day. We talk about transferring client intent across departments, why sales has to stay involved long after the deal is signed, how collaboration beats the speed, cost, quality trade-off, and what it really takes to break down silos inside a growing construction company. If you've ever delivered a project that was technically successful, but still felt wrong to the client, this conversation will hit close to home. And if you are design build curious, this episode will give you lots of insights into how to run a successful design build firm. Let's dive right in. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Ryan, welcome to Construction Genius.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great. Please introduce yourself and your company to the audience.
All right. My name is Ryan Teicher. I'm the CEO of REDCOM Design and Construction. We are a full service in-house commercial design and general contracting construction management firm. What makes us unique is that we have all of our disciplines in-house under one roof. We have architects, we have engineers, and we have estimating and project management and field supervision, all actual employees of REDCOM.
When did you guys make that decision to bring everything in-house, or have you always functioned that way?
It was kind of a gradual decision. So the company's been around for about 40 years. I've been here for 3. But over the years, we started out as a general contracting and engineering firm. And in about 2010, we brought architecture into the fold and just kind of grew from there. That was the linchpin that we really needed to start the growth.
I know you weren't here at the time, there in the company at the time, but was there a particular conflict, situation, market shift that led you to think about bringing architecture in-house?
Not really. It was more of a familial thing. It was Greg Reddington, our owner. His wife, Michelle, is an architect by trade.
There you go.
So they decided to bring architecture into the fold, and it was a great decision. So the company name was REDCO. And then when they brought Michelle's architecture firm, they added the M at the end, and now it completed the name to REDCOM.
That's beautiful. So as you're engaging with clients, how do you present your offering in terms of what's in it for them by engaging with a company that is sort of a one-stop shop for their construction project?
Yeah, so that's the crux of our value proposition here. We promote that we can increase speed to market, meaning when a client comes to us with an idea, getting the idea with a raw piece of land to the point where you can actually build on it is much quicker when you're dealing with a firm like us. We don't have to wait for communications between architects and engineers and estimating and construction. We're all on the same team. We all wear the same name on our shirt. So we collaborate really well. We're in one building. We have our building designed as such where collaboration is really easy. We call it the hangar. It's like this big open space that's separated by workstations, and each department has their own pod, but it's all an open floor plan. So we have these tables going down the center aisle of the office, and it just is conducive to people grabbing each other, an architect and a salesperson and an engineer getting together, standing around the table with a set of plans to brainstorm and to talk about a project. It's super efficient, and it helps us get through the whole process from keys to trees really quickly.
Keys to trees. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's interesting. I was chatting with my daughter last night, and I was explaining to her how a construction company works. And I was sharing with her, you could say, the cliche that you have speed, quality, cost when it comes to building a project, and you can pick two of those, but you can't have all three. You mentioned speed to market. When you're working with your clients, in addition to the speed, do you guys maintain the quality and sacrifice the cost? Or how do you guys work through that dynamic? Or is that not a paradigm that works or is relevant to you?
That's the value that you get with REDCOM. You get all three.
Ah,
We don't abide by that cliche.
okay, cool. Tell me about that. How do you manage that then? Because it's some, cliches are cliches because they are generally true. What do you guys
Right.
do to maintain quality and also cost while being focusing on the speed to market?
Yeah. So, like I said before, it's our collaboration. We're all together in the same building. So, there are times it's known in the industry when you have an architect and an engineer on a job, those plans never sync up.
Yeah.
You get a set of drawings from the architect, you get a set of drawings from the engineer, and you're looking at them. There's a conflict here, there's a conflict there. We work through those conflicts at the very beginning of the job. We have stop gates during our design process where we do peer reviews interdepartment. So engineers and architects get together, they look at the drawings as we progress through the project. So it's not in one office until it gets to a certain completion point, then goes over to the other office. The architect's looking at the engineering drawings and saying, the roof is sloping in the opposite direction. You need gutters on the other side of the building. We need drainage over there. You got to redesign. We get to those issues earlier on, so it saves time and it saves the client money, and we have high quality.
Okay, so then typically in a non-design build or all-in-one solution, typically the engineer or the architect is advocating for the client. The construction company is saying, you guys are clueless. You have no idea what you're talking about. Your drawing's pretty, but it's not going to work in real life. When it comes to the way you manage a client through the process with the all-in-one solution, who is the main advocate for the client internally?
So we have a sales department, and our sales department is the advocate for the client. They start to understand the client's intent from the very early onset of these sales meetings. And we kind of sell a lump sum situation. So at the beginning of the engagement, we'll tell the client, this is what we think the project's going to cost. And it's up to us to make sure that we stay within those guidelines. If not, it's on us.
Okay. So when it comes to the sales department, how have you built that sales department so that they have the right perspective on what it actually takes to build a construction project and they're not over-promising to the client?
So our sales department is not just salespeople. When we go on sales meetings, our sales department will bring an estimator with them, and they'll bring a schematic architect with them. And in some cases, if necessary, they'll bring a civil engineer with them. So our whole team goes to these sales meetings. And that way, we don't have to have the salesperson who doesn't have the knowledge that you're expressing come back to the office, have a meeting, talk about it, and then go back to the client. We come with our briefcase with trace paper and our tape measures and our scales, and our sales meetings are working meetings, brainstorming
Excellent.
sessions.
Yep. Okay, I get that. Do you ever bid on or build projects that are not sort of the all-in-one solution that you're describing?
Yeah, we do bid build projects as well. We prefer the design build. That's more in our wheelhouse, but I'd say about 40% of our job is bid build.
Okay. But 60% is the design build then?
Correct.
Strategically, long term, are you looking to grow that side of the business, or is it just the nature of the market that you're going to have the 60-40 split?
I think we like that split. It gives us the ability to pick up jobs throughout the year if we get a little slow, if we need fill-in projects. Yep. I kind of like that split. There is also a little bit of a dichotomy to that design build model. Clients are a little hesitant to enter into an agreement with a firm for the all-in solution right up front.
Yeah.
Committing to a $10 million purchase is not an easy thing.
Yes.
So we've adjusted our process a little bit. We've modified our process whereby we enter into consulting agreements with the client.
Mm-hmm.
And that's for the design services. We'll provide the design services on a consulting agreement, so it's a smaller commitment.
Yes.
And then it ends up being, like a 4 or 5 month interview for our construction department, basically.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, when we deliver, we're nearing completion of delivering those drawings. Then we enter into the construction agreement for the balance of it. But all the while during the process, our construction department is involved. It's a risk that we take for the benefit of the client.
How many of those design agreements don't get converted into construction projects?
I'd say in the past few years, I can't remember one
Okay.
that hasn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it is a process then that works for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And coming to that conclusion that you would provide the design services up front in lieu of a complete contract, how long did it take you to reach that strategic decision or that sales process decision?
Yeah, it took some time. There were a lot of nerves with a lot of the folks that have been doing this way for a very long time. But what started happening is that we were losing jobs. We losing clients who weren't willing to make that initial commitment up front.
Yeah.
We have repeat clients and there are still clients that come to us and say, this is the way you did it for me last time. I want to do it the same way. I don't want to worry about anything. I want you to, tell me how much it costs and we're going to do it. I trust you. That's few and far between now.
Okay. So the bid build portion of your business, do you actively seek to, assuming they have more projects to build, do you actively seek to convert those bid build into design build for the next project?
Yes, always. We always do. Yeah. Yeah, we truly believe that it's a better process.
Yeah,
for the client.
And is that something that you start selling to them, so to speak, right out of the gate as you're building the project, or is that something you come back to them the next time they bring a project your way?
It really depends. One thing that we try to do is to be sensitive in the industry, because in a bid build job, we're dealing with a different architect, and we're a construction and architecture firm. So we don't want to completely alienate all of the other architecture and engineering firms. We want to play nice in the sandbox. So that's kind of a touchy place to be. If the client is satisfied with their architecture firm, we're not going to try and steal them. But if there are indications that they're not entirely happy with their architecture firm, we'll start to propose our all integrated process.
All right, quick break to talk about my book, Construction Genius. This is what I want you to do. Go to Amazon, search for the book, read all of the 5-star reviews, because there's a ton of them. Over 50 to be precise. And the reason I want you to read them is because real people wrote those reviews who've actually read the book. And it'll give you an idea of why you should go and buy a copy right now on Amazon. And here's the deal. If you purchase 10 or more copies for your company, and then send me an email, eric@constructiongenius.com, I'll come in via Zoom and do a 1-hour Q&A and a bonus training session with your team at no charge. I normally charge $4,500 for an hour of my time. And again, for you, I'll do it at no charge if you buy 10 or more copies of my book. And the reason you should buy it is all in the title. It's effective, hands-on, practical, simple, no BS, leadership, strategy, sales, and marketing advice for construction companies. So if you're in the construction industry, this book is for you. So you can get it on Amazon. You can also get it on Audible in the audio version as well, narrated by yours truly. And I know you'll really enjoy it. So go out and get the book. And now back to the interview.
How do you guys work through a project that's bid build in terms of determining where the client's at with the architect? Is that something you just rely on the project manager to kind of keep his or her ear to the ground and see what's up? Or do you have like a regular check-in to kind of see what the lay of the land is and what opportunities may lay ahead for the company?
Yeah, we're all salespeople here. So the project managers keep their ear to the ground.
Okay.
They do. Yeah. And they're working hand in hand with the architect. They're working with them, on a regular basis, sending in submittals and RFIs and questions and construction administration. The architect is supposed to be coming out and visiting the site and checking up on construction throughout the duration of the project. So there's a very close relationship, which is another reason why we try not to alienate other architects in the industry, because we have to work with them.
Yeah, that's interesting. You use this phrase, we're all salespeople. I agree 100% with you in what you're saying. However, in many construction companies, if I would say that to a superintendent or a project manager or even an engineer or an architect, they would be like, nah, I'm not a salesperson. This is what I do. How do you communicate that mindset of we're all salespeople to the people in your organization? Yeah,
we work very hard on communicating that because it's really important. It's been communicated since before I even joined the company. It's in our culture. The owner, Greg Reddington, feels very strongly about that. So he's been communicating it for years. But another way that we implement it rather than just communicating it is, like I said before, we bring our teams to these sales meetings. Supers are included in that team.
Nice.
So we'll bring a super to a client meeting. We empower them to speak up. If they see something in the meeting that they can add value for, they're empowered to speak up. We ask them to. Yeah.
Okay. So as you're working with people and you're working with a new client, let's say the client comes to you and they don't have a bunch of experience in building projects. And so they're kind of putting their lives in your hands, so to speak. How do you define what their intent for the project is? How do you bring that out of them without imposing on them too much of your own expertise and your own vision? How does that work?
So we ask a lot of questions. Our salespeople have a litany of questions, but it's all about asking open-ended questions. So rather than asking yes, no questions, we ask open-ended questions. We let them speak and we field and absorb everything that they're telling us. And we impose our experience as the conversation goes along. But our sales meetings, an ideal sales meeting is mostly the client talking and letting them explain to us. We ask them not just about the structure that they're trying to build, but we ask them about their business. If it's in the case that you're explaining, it's most of the time it's the end users that are inexperienced, manufacturing or a 3PL or something like that. So we ask a lot of questions about how they operate in their business so that we can understand what it is that they need. They probably don't necessarily know how to articulate it in construction terminology. So we get it in their terminology, and then we'll kind of translate that into construction terminology.
Can you give me an example of your 2 or 3 favorite or fundamental questions that you guys are always going into, let's say, the initial interview ready to ask?
So it depends. We do a lot of warehouse buildings. We do a lot of auto dealerships. Auto dealerships is relatively easy. How many service bays do you think that you need? How many mechanics do you have? So that'll help us understand the size and the breadth of their service center. How many salespeople do you have? How do you handle your sales process? What's the flow of customers coming into the building? Where do they go? Where does your finance department sit currently? Where would you like them to sit? What are some of the challenges that you have in your business now that a new structure could help you alleviate?
And once you defined the client intent, how do you make sure that that client intent is maintained throughout the entire process of the building, so it doesn't get diluted and they wake up one day and say, that's not what I wanted?
Yeah, that's all about communication. It's communication and collaboration. The salesperson brings back that intent, and it's challenging. It's a really challenging part of our process, because you can't just write down client intent. You can write down the components that they're looking for in the building, but is this a client that wants a super high quality product, or is this a client that wants something cheap, bare bones, short-term investment, long-term investment? So like understanding the personality of the client, that has to get translated throughout the duration of the project. The salesperson has to spearhead the project, and they can't just hand it off to the rest of the organization once they slay the dragon, so to speak. Our salespeople are involved from the very beginning of the project all the way through to the end.
Is that ever a challenge for salespeople? Because I know, being in sales for many years, you get basically 2 types of salespeople. You get your hunters and your farmers, right? Mm-hmm. And your hunters are, they killed the dragon and now they're off to find another dragon. And you can tell them, hey, we want you to hold their hand through the process. But they're like, dude, I'm the dragon slayer around here and I'm out to hunt some more dragons. How do you work through that process?
Yeah, that's the tough part. And having them come in for, they don't even have to come in for the full meeting when we have our project meetings, but they are involved in the team meetings on a regular cadence. So they have to be out on the street, knocking on doors and slaying dragons. But it's also important for them to maintain presence in those meetings. And the hope is that they do that so that they can get the next job from that client.
Yep. So most construction companies don't go out of business because of the projects they lose. They go out of business because of the projects that they win, but the project sucks for whatever reason, right? Okay, so when it comes to this design build, let's say you have a customer come to you and they say, Ryan, we want to do your process. We want to do it your way, but you have a sneaky suspicion that it's not going to work out. What are some of those red flags that would cause you to say to someone, we're not a fit for you, even if you want to do the design build process?
Well, not paying their consulting bills is a start.
Okay.
There's some clients out there that, you have these, ultimate goal is a $10, $12 million project. And we have during the design phase, we send invoices just like any other architectural or engineering consulting firm would. And sometimes it's like pulling teeth trying to get them to pay for the design services. If they're not willing to pay a $70,000 invoice now, well, they're probably going to be challenging you on every step of the way throughout the construction process, and they'll never be happy with what you can deliver. So that may be a client that we want to say thanks, but no thanks.
So that's interesting, right? Because that's a great logic behind doing the design consulting upfront, is that you can test them on things like their payment, whether they're a pain in the neck to work with and all that kind of stuff. And you could even walk away before consummating the final construction project.
It's an interview both ways. I said before, it's an interview of us. We're interviewing them at the same time. And we have walked away from clients because it just wasn't a good fit.
Yeah, that's really great. It's interesting. One of the things I've noticed over the years is being willing to walk away is more important than actually walking away, because it communicates to the client that you're not desperate and you're willing to not work with them if it's not going to be a fit.
Yeah. And trust me, that's a hard call to make, especially as a CEO. You have targets that you're trying to meet, and that project was in your forecasts, in your part of your target, and to walk away from it is really, really difficult. We had to give money back to a client once. We said, you know what, this isn't going to work. I know that we did this work for you, but here's your deposit back. I think it's best if you find somebody else. And it turns out that client never even built that building.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, that's one of the ways I've found to be very effective working with people who haven't worked with you before is just say, hey, I'll give you 100% money back guarantee. If it doesn't work, I'll just give you your money back and we'll shake hands and part friends. That can be very powerful there. How do you keep people internally aligned as you're going through a construction project? Because oftentimes, if you think about the framework where things start off in order, it then goes to disorder and then ends up in chaos. That's sort of the law of entropy there. How do you guys fight against entropy internally while still maintaining an outward look upon winning new projects with new clients?
We try to use technology. Technology helps. We have a system in place that we track delivery dates and the status of projects, and everyone has exposure to that. But what it really comes down to is breaking through the silos. And we work really hard on, and it's a work in progress, breaking through the silos, but each department ends up being their silo. And getting them to work together is a challenge. One of the ways that we're trying to get around that challenge is team building activities with people from different departments. Get out of the office, have lunch together, go for a happy hour, go bowling together. We play a kickball game every once in a while. We mix up the teams so that people from different departments. The goal is for people to just kind of become friendly and comfortable with each other so that they're comfortable in standing up, walking across the hall in the office and saying, hey, I have this problem. Can you help me out? So that helps manage the chaos and just making everybody comfortable with each other, instilling that there's no stupid questions. Everybody can ask a question about anything. It's important.
When I think about the silos in construction companies, it's again proverbial that there are silos. And what I've found working over the years with a number of different companies is that the reason why those silos exist often is because of a conflict at the top of the silo between the head of those departments. So my chief estimator can't stand my director of operations, right? Or my CFO and the COO, they don't get along. And so that then just trickles down all throughout the organization. Have you found that to be true?
No, I think we're lucky. I call it luck, call it something else, but we don't have those problems here. We have an amazing group of people who respect each other and really work well together. And it's unlike anything that I've seen in my career.
Why do you think that's the case? Because that's for you to say that is, I mean, that's awesome, but it is unusual. What drives that unity at the top of the silos?
It's got to be all the work that we do to do this for this team building. We try to create, we're a 55-person company, so we're a family company, but we're getting up there in size. Only 12 of those people are field supers. So the rest of them are in the office, and we're an in-person operation. We're not remote. So we spend a lot of time together, and we are in each other's space. And, we try to respect each other, and we try to have fun at the same time.
You got to work on that though, right?
Yeah. It takes a lot of work. And it's important to me And, I think that when it's important to at the top and you can kind of filter that down, it gets contagious and it catches on. And I promote anybody can walk into my office at any time, have a conversation, and I'm not going to yell at you for asking me a question. I'm not going to berate you for making a mistake. I'll help you try and fix it. And if you keep making that mistake several times over again, then it's a different situation. But we create that culture of comfort so that everybody can speak to each other.
Think about the last time you promoted someone into a leadership role and it failed. Why did it fail? I can tell you one reason. People know how to build projects, but they don't know how to build and lead teams of people. Construction comes with its challenges that only insiders truly understand. Generic leadership training doesn't cut it. You need a program to train your leaders built specifically for construction professionals led by an industry expert. And my online course, The Shift, is exactly that course. It has 5 modules. It'll teach your people how to control their calendars and reduce stress and embrace chaos and accomplish their critical tasks. It will teach them the 3 essential messages they have to communicate every day in order to motivate and lead their team effectively. It'll show them how to build and lead a high-performing team, give them a framework for running effective meetings so they'll be able to solve problems in less than an hour, and also give them a higher perspective on their leadership that will enable them to work on the business and on their teams and not get stuck in the weeds micromanaging. So go out to my website, theshift.constructiongenius.com, read all about the course, and then enroll yourself and your leaders in the course, and I guarantee that it will transform your leadership. If it does not, you take the whole course and you didn't get benefit from it, you just send me an email, eric@constructiongenius.com, and I will cheerfully refund you 100% of your money. I'm really confident this course will transform your leadership. So again, go out to the website, theshift.constructiongenius.com, learn more about the course, and start taking it today.
So it's interesting, right? You described what some people commonly call an open door policy. How do you manage an open door policy so that you're not being interrupted all the time and unable to work on the top priorities that only you can accomplish?
Yeah, that gets hard. I have an executive assistant that helps me with that, helps manage. She's cognitive enough to know that if I'm super stressed and I have important things that I'm working on, she'll come in and politely escort that person out. I'm also honest. I'm honest with
That's
people.
good.
In fact, yesterday I had somebody come into my office and they said, I have this idea about something. Can I talk to you about it? I said, yes, I want to hear your idea. It's important to me, but I have a really important deadline right now and I just can't have the conversation right now. So let's table this and let's talk about this this afternoon. I said at 3:30, I had some time to talk about it. So I want to hear about you. I'm not pushing you off, but now's not a good time.
So that's really a very interesting thing, because to get into your position and to succeed there, a lot of the reason why people are in high leadership roles is because they've said yes again and again and again. But it's ironic that once you get into that senior role, you then have to begin to get very good at saying no in the selective sense that you just described.
Right. Yeah. And you have to be polite while you're saying no in a lot of cases, respectful. The guy who came in and wanted to talk to me, turns out he had an amazing idea.
Yeah.
And he was challenging something that I said in a sales meeting. I passed on a project in a sales meeting. And he came to me and he said, why'd you pass on that project? So I explained it to him and he says, I have a lot of experience in that area and I'm really confident in our abilities to perform on that project. So I said, go for it. Let's do it.
It's interesting. When you came into the company, you were describing earlier the open workspace that you have that enhances the collaboration that you value in the company. Was that open workspace already pre-existing when you came into the company?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. When we built this building in 2017, that open workspace was designed that way. Yeah.
Okay. So you've had that for almost a decade then, this open workspace. The reason I ask is because, that's something that I know other construction companies have advocated for and they've tried, and then they've gone back to the more siloed workspace because people complain that they can't get their work done. How do you guys again, going sort of back to this idea of I need to get my work done, but I need to collaborate at the same time. How do you manage that as you're doing your work on a daily and a weekly basis?
I've been managing through that for the past year. I've had a focus on that. And my approach has been to let everyone understand the perspective of the other person that they're bothering. So, for example, an architect, they sit in the back of our space. The architects are head down. They're focused. When they're drawing, they really need to focus on every line, every dimension, and they have to be head down. Well, when a project manager has a question about a submittal, they walk up to the architect and say, "Hey, can I just interrupt you real quick?" The architect says, "Sure." They look up, they work with that guy, and then they have to look down at their paper, and it takes them probably another 15, 20 minutes to get back to the point that they were at. They got distracted. So the project manager now understands why, rather than the architect just complaining and saying, "I can't stand this, stop bothering me." They understand why it's a bother. And maybe there's another approach that they can take to approach that architect and get the answer. And the same thing goes the other way. Super calls and has an emergency. So we've been training these supers on evaluate the level of that emergency. Is that emergency going to stop the job and you need an answer right now? Or is that an emergency that can wait 2 hours for the architect to call you back to answer? So it's been like, I need an answer now.
Yeah.
But do you really? Right. Think for a second. Do you really need an answer now? If so, make that call. If not, maybe it's an email.
Interesting. And did you come into the company as the CEO?
Yes.
You did. Okay. How did you establish your credibility as an outsider coming into the company in the first 6 months?
Who says I have? When I came here, I took the approach of, and I kind of like what we do with clients. I came in listening. I came in and I kind of interviewed everybody. I wanted to understand how everyone works. What's the culture here? What's the climate here? And I didn't come in guns a-blazing like I'm the best thing here and I'm going to change everything. My directive from the owner was to find the leaks in the boat because he believed that we weren't profitable enough with the work that we were doing. So I've been working on finding the leaks in the boat, not just coming in and raising hell. So I think by coming in and listening and understanding how people are doing business right now and not just saying, I'm the new sheriff in town, this is the way we're going to do things now, immediately out of the gate, I think that helped build some credibility and respect.
How did you switch from listening mode to acting mode?
It's gradual. I'm still listening. So there are certain things that were low-hanging fruit that we acted on, or that I acted on. There were some organizational structure, like organizational chart type things that I addressed relatively quickly, and those were taken to pretty well. But it's gradual, it's still happening.
If you could do your first couple of years, you're 3 years in now, if you could do your first couple of years over again, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently?
I think I would take more of a role on the business development side. I've been focusing on operations quite a bit. I've been focusing on finance quite a bit. And I think I haven't been focusing enough on client relationships and business development.
Okay. What steps have you taken or are you going to take to make sure that you do focus on client relationships and business development? Because it is something that can easily go to the wayside when you've got fires in ops and fires in finances.
Yeah, I've been making a concerted effort to get out to some networking events, just get out of the office. And it's evenings and weekends that are the ones that I can really get to. So I've made the commitment to get to those events.
And those networking events, how do you choose what networking events to go to?
I lean on my business development team to tell me which ones they think are successful, which ones would be appropriate for me to be at. So yeah, I lean on their experience and expertise, and they're guiding me along through it.
Yeah, the reason I ask that is because unfortunately, many construction companies spend too much time networking with their competition as opposed to networking with their potential clients. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How do you prepare yourself for those networking meetings? Are you a natural salesperson or are you more sort of ops and you have to kind of psych yourself up to go to those?
That's why I haven't done them for the past
right.
couple of years. If I liked it, I would have gone straight to that department and and avoided ops. But no, I got to psych myself up. I have to just get out of my comfort zone and just jump in.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's something, but I would say, it's funny because everyone thinks, well, I don't like networking events. I think probably about 20% of the population actually likes networking events, and everybody else has to psych themselves up to one degree or another in order to go to those, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Let me ask you this. What are your long-term goals for the organization?
Growth. We want to grow. So the first few years of my tenure here, it was clean up the operations, become more efficient with what we have, deliver the revenue that we have more efficiently. Now I'm at that point where I think we've made some improvements and I'm comfortable with the fact that it's time for us to grow. So we're expanding now into new market areas. So we've expanded into multifamily. We're doing some multifamily projects now, and we're growing and expanding into pharma and life science. That's an area in New Jersey that's blowing up. So that's an area of growth. We'd like to keep the same amount of revenue that we have with auto dealerships and industrial buildings and add in these other product types into the mix.
That's great. As we're wrapping up here, let's say I'm running a construction company and I'm doing maybe 80, 90% bid build, but design build is something that I'm intrigued in and I want to get more into it. What advice would you give someone over a couple of beers on 2 or 3 things they should begin to look at in order to move towards more of that design build approach to running a company?
First, I say stay away. But then
let's assume that they're not in your market. They're in somebody else's market.
I would say that you need a strong schematic architect, somebody who's creative and can think outside the box. And the same thing with a strong schematic civil engineer, someone who understands drainage and all of the municipal requirements, but can be a creative thinker. You need those creative thinkers who are going to think outside the box because that's your differentiator from these other organizations. We have the construction knowledge, and that construction knowledge gets passed off to the architects and engineers. Another one of the challenges in the industry is that an architect puts something on paper, they shoot it off, it gets built, they never know what happened with their drawing.
Right.
So our architects go out and they meet with our superintendents, and the superintendents sit there and they talk about, if you would have moved this wall over here and put a brick shelf on that, it would have been easier for me to build it. I had to make that change in the field. So then the architect knows for the next time. But I'd say that creativity on the schematic side is really important for a design build firm.
That's great. That's great. As a CEO, speaking to another CEO, what's one book that you would recommend someone read in order to learn more about how to excel as a CEO?
It's a little silly and a little basic, but The 1 Minute Manager.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. That was one that
I wouldn't call that silly or basic. Good. I think that's pretty awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. The 1 Minute Manager. That's an old, I remember the 1 Minute Manager from the early 90s when I got out of college. It's just beautiful.
Yeah. It's a quick read. Yep. It's impactful and it says it all.
That's beautiful.
I look this way because it's sitting on my bookshelf over there. I have 4 copies. I give it out to people in the office here.
Yeah, what's cool about that, and I think this is important with business books, is there's so many business books out there that really should just be an article at the most. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right.
And the 1 Minute Manager is appropriately modest. It's nice and thin, and it just has some straightforward advice. And if you use the advice, it'll probably help you be a better leader.
Yep. And it's like that fable style that I happen to like. It's relatable.
Yeah. A good story always helps the medicine to go down.
That's right.
That's beautiful. Ryan, if people want to learn more about your company, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, I'm all over social media, Ryan Teicher, REDCOM Design Construction, and our website is redcomllc.com.
Absolutely. We'll put the links in the show notes, and we'll put a link to your LinkedIn.
My LinkedIn, yeah.
Yep. We'll get that all in the show notes so people can get in touch with you. Appreciate you dive ins and outs of design build and what you're doing with your company. I do wish you all the best, Ryan.
Yeah, this was fun. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to my conversation with Ryan today. Please give the show a rating and a review wherever you get your podcasts. Please connect with Ryan on LinkedIn. I'm sure if you have any questions about design build and all that kind of exciting stuff, he would be more than happy to engage with you. And again, thanks for listening to Construction Genius. We'll catch you on the next episode. Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, And always remember that the show is brought to you by Kick-Ass Meetings. I've been working with construction leaders since 2004, teaching them how to run extremely effective problem-solving meetings that gets their people collaborating, taps into their creativity. And to get yourself a free copy of the Kick-Ass Meeting Report, go to www.ericanderton.com/kickassmeetings. Grab yourself that free report, read it, use it in your business. You'll find it extremely useful. And thanks again for listening.